morning, church. Can everybody hear me? First of all, I want to say the pastor tricked me. I was in his office a few weeks ago, and I was sharing with him an experience. And I never thought that sharing this experience would get me up here. And I was joking with him this morning. I said, Pastor, I think you tricked me. And he said, you never know where God will lead you. So I believe that I'm here because God has led me here. I thank everybody this morning for being here. And I want to share with you a story. It's a story about my family. And I want to see if I can get this to work here. Window. Let's see. Is it on? Let's see. It's on, and I'm pressing this button. Okay. This is a picture of my family. On the right is my mom, and I'm going to go to the right. And that's my younger brother, James. The lady's my sister. Then I have Michael. Everybody sees me. And the person at the end, that is my father. Okay? Now, we don't get together often because we live in different places. Everyone else, besides my sister and I, live in Florida. That picture was taken at a very special event. My son graduated from Oakwood. So everybody came to Huntsville, and we got that picture. Now, when we took that picture, it was interesting because we realized we had not all been together for a very, very long time. Maybe 2 weeks after we took that picture, I was sitting down on my sofa, and I was watching the game. It was the NBA Finals, and I was really into this game. My phone rang. Now, it was my younger brother, James. James does not really call me often. Most times, James and I miss each other, so we'll catch up with each other. So I almost didn't answer that call because I was looking at Steph Curry, and I said, you know what, I'm going to talk to him later. But something prompted me, take that call. So I took the call, and when I picked up the phone, this is what my brother said. He says, Mark, I'm in the car with Michael. I'm calling you first. I want to let you know that Dad is dead. I did not know what to say. I did not know how to respond. He says, Molly, that's his wife, called and said to come to the office quick. We're heading down there. I said, how far are you from the office? He said, 15 minutes. I said, I'll call you back in 15 minutes. 4 days before that call, I was sitting on my deck with my wife. It was the Sabbath. And my wife looked at me and she says, honey, I want you to draw circles with me. I said, draw circles? She says, yeah, there's this book, and it's a 40-day prayer challenge, and I want you to do this with me. And I said, well, you know, okay, babe, I'll do this thing with you. I said, where'd you get it from? She said, well, one of my old classmates from Oakwood, they said that they read this book, and it changed their lives. And I said, why don't we do it? So we had the book. She got me a copy. She had her copy. She gave me a journal, and we're doing a 40-day prayer challenge. Now, I was only on day 3 or 4, and one of the most important lessons I had learned so far was that when you don't know what to say to God, you ask him what to say. So what I did was I put the phone down after I hung up from my brother, and I walked into my bedroom. And I have a chair that's sitting there that goes in front of the television. I kneeled in front of the chair, and I began to pray. And I said, oh God, tell me what to say. And he said, ask me for mercy. And I said, Lord, have mercy on me. I said it again. I said, Lord, have mercy on me. And by the third time I said it, I heard God tell me, no, ask me to have mercy on everybody. So I began to call out my son's name. I said, Lord, have mercy on Asher. Have mercy on Austin. I called out Tamika's name. I began to go down my family's name. And after I had exhausted every name that I could think of that was connected with my father, I got up. I walked to the room where my son and my wife was, and I said, my dad is dead. My son walked to me. He put his hands on my shoulder. My wife broke down. I disappeared out the room, and I went and I sat back on the sofa, and I looked at my phone, and I realized 15 minutes had passed. So I called my brother, and I called him. The first thing he said when I called him, he says, Mark, Dad is not dead. He's not breathing. He's not responsive. But the EMT is there, and they're intubating him, and they're taking him down to JFK to find out what is wrong. Prayer answered. God had mercy. Within 24 hours, my sister and I, who live in Nashville and here, were in the hospital room with my father. We arrived Thursday evening. My dad had been diagnosed with pulmonary edema. Basically, his fluid had built up in his lungs to the extent that he couldn't breathe. They had put him on a ventilator. The ventilator was set at 50, and they explained to me that when we normally breathe, we breathe about 20% oxygen, and that they were giving my dad 30% extra oxygen to keep his oxygen blood level up enough for him to sustain life. They said that him being on a ventilator for a long time was not a good thing. But they also said another thing, that he also had congestive heart failure, which had caused the pulmonary edema. And so they said they were going to move him to CVICU, which is cardiovascular ICU. We left that night. And after we left that night, I went and I just sat down and I felt so empty. The next morning, Friday morning, I walked into the room and I got more bad news. They said that he developed pneumonia. They said they had to push the ventilator up to 60. They said that they were giving him a diuretic, but when they gave him a diuretic, they realized that it caused his blood pressure to drop to an unsafe level, and they then diagnosed him with aortic stenosis. I'm not clinical, but they explained to me that the top part of his heart, that feeds his body, that valve had calcified. So as they took off fluids, the heart didn't want to push as fast or as hard as it should. And they said that it just didn't really look good. Now, that's Friday. And I called my wife to give her an update. And the first thing my wife says is, did you read your circle today? And I said, no, I hadn't read my circle. She says, I know, because you left your book. She says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan in your circle, and I'm going to email it to you, and you need to read that thing. And so I said, okay, babe, I'll read the circle. And so my sister, she's very clinical, and she's a nurse. So she was real quick to kind of brief me, hey, listen, Mark, I know you don't do this, but Dad's bad off. There's a lot of stuff that's wrong. I don't think he's going to walk out of here, and I need you to prepare yourself for this. And my sister and I, she's really just hardcore and just real, okay? Next thing she says, last time I was down here, Dad told me where his will was, and his will is, she gave me the location. She says, we may need to go down there and look at this will to figure out what to do next. And so when I went back in the room, the nurse actually gave us more bad news and said that his kidneys were beginning to fail, because when they had pulled off the fluid, it didn't have enough fluid for his kidneys, so his kidneys began to shut down. The doctors advised to us that this case was complex. They said In order to fix one system, we have to damage another system. If we fix the kidneys, then it's going to have too much fluid on his lungs, he won't be able to breathe. And if we fix the kidneys, then the heart's going to shut down. He said, this is a very complicated case. And he said, what we're going to do is we're going to give him fluids to kind of save the kidneys, because that is the most important thing right now. Now, during that time, the doctor was really honest and says that he's got a lot of stuff going on. And the pneumonia was not clearing up, and they said that possibly he may even have sepsis. Which I'm not really clinical, but I have someone in our family, her name is Kiki. And Kiki is James's wife, and she's a nurse. And she was really quick to pull me off to the side and explain to me something. She explained to me a term called comorbidities, which was basically a fancy way of saying that sometimes you go to the hospital and what you go there for doesn't even kill you. You have other stuff that happen while you're there, and you end up losing your life. So she says, now, he came in with pulmonary edema, but now he has CHF, he has stenosis of the aortic valve, he has pneumonia, and he's going into renal failure. She says he's at the door of multi-system failure. And I'm sitting here, and I don't know what to say or what to do. I walk back into the room, and everybody's there just silent around my dad. At this time, my dad is swelling up because they're giving him a lot of fluids, and he doesn't look anything like himself. If you touch him, he's hard. His legs are swollen, and I look at him, and I say to myself, he's dying. He's dying. And so as the moment I say that, God tells me, leave the room. And I left the room. And I leave the room, and I look down the hall, and there's a green chair sitting there. He says, go sit in that chair. And so I go sit in and I'm hearing him talk to me like I'm talking to you. And I sit down in the chair, and he says, read your circle. And so I go through my phone. I have to find my circles. My wife has scanned it in. And I have the book here, and God is just amazing. God is just amazing.